Good morning, fuckfaces. Uh, this is an episode of the Good Guy podcast with a guest. It will come out today, Friday, the lockdown of lockdowns, the lockdown of lockdown. Plugs, Mondays, solo podcast, Fridays, guest podcast. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, because what fucking difference does it make to your life just to go like, boo, to me and make me feel good, you know? Same on iTunes. What difference does it make to your life? Take 10 seconds. 5-star review. Come on, get stuck in. Hit subscribe. I have great guests. I have great thoughts on Mondays by myself. All sorts of things. Get involved. Get involved. Follow me on Instagram at Vittorio Angelone. On Twitter at that Vittorio. Facebook if you're 94 years old. YouTube. I've already said all of these things. Tuesdays and Thursdays doing bits with comedians, working on new material and talking about comedy. Our last guest was Atif Nawaz, which is now available on YouTube and is coming out on the podcast platforms today. I should do that now, but I'm tired and it's warm, so I might not. I might do it tomorrow instead. And then look, I put out a new video every Saturday, whether it's a sketch or a stand-up clip or something of that ilk. So, yeah. I hope you enjoy this podcast. It's with Pope Lonergan, who's a good friend of mine, despite only having met a couple times. But we get on very well. And I think he's a good man. He's a good man, I tell you. He's a good man. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Send me a message of what you thought about the podcast. Put it in the comments on YouTube. Screenshot it, post it on your story. If you're watching on YouTube, screenshot it now. But if you're on podcast, just like Instagram story, really helps spread the word of the podcast. Look, this podcast isn't going to get picked up by any kind of sterile corporate comedy entity or a fucking production company. Like, I just need the fucking people that enjoy it to spread the word to other people that will enjoy it, and then we'll build an empire of fucking cunts, or good guys, more accurately. But that's enough nattering from me. My nose is full. I hope you enjoy this episode of the podcast, and I will see you on the other side. Give it up for Pope Lonergan. Wild, everyone will go wild. What's the crack, mate? So for people who are listening who don't know who you are, I mean, you're a comedian. You're about to become an author. You're an avid reader. You're a fucking junkie.
Yeah.
If you were to introduce yourself to like the Good Guy podcast audience, how would you introduce yourself?
I think you've covered all the bases, mate. I think pretty ticked all the boxes. Junkie. Worked in elderly care for a long time and sort of back to it, and I sort of tried to bridge the gap of my two existences by doing comedy in care homes as well, comedy specifically tailored for people with dementia. And then also, a lot of my comedy is about elderly death, so I'm almost mathematically ill-suited to this current moment as a comedian, because we know the elders aren't having a good season, and so
that's true. A lot of your audience is disappearing.
Yeah, I know. But it's even like the last gig I had at Not Too Bad before the last gig I had before lockdown. It's because people are on tenterhooks about this sort of post-lapsarian moment we're in, and then because it was elderly people that were sort of disproportionately affected by this. When I did stuff that would usually smash about like the elders or elderly death and stuff, people
There's
were
a bit more
edgy. Yeah, just
people suddenly fucking care about old people. Do you know what I mean? It's exactly. Like, where were you?
Yeah, it's why I have to kind of take out that part of my set even during Christmas, at Christmas time.
Yes, because
a lot of people die in that period. Yeah, people just find it harder to get on board with it.
Which is from like the Christmas thing has always been remarkable to me, that there seems to be some element of choice in when you die. At a certain stage, you can hold, like people always say, oh, she held on till Christmas. And you're like, well, why didn't she hold on longer then?
Yeah. But the thing I never understand about that is it like you're clenching your soul, like is it like you're going like oh like that, and then suddenly you let go and your soul,
Because they always say let go. I'd love to know what that feels like.
Yeah,
like
I mean, you can feel yourself like teetering on the edge of the Empyrean, and you're
is
like
it
just
like,
like ah, and then
is
it's
it
like
when you're falling asleep and you're trying to
yeah,
stay awake and you're like, I need
yeah,
to make it till Christmas.
yeah. So you have to like. Oh, like, just to stay in the world,
smashing Red Bulls, just
yeah,
like
yeah. God, need to carry on a little bit longer. Fucking buzzing off life.
Well, that's it's just that I've never really addressed. I just thought it's always fascinating. Oh, she held on. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that. I've seen a lot of people die and slip away. Yes, it's a strange sensation, sort of witnessing it in front of your eyes. But it's also quite boring. I think that's the problem. Waiting around for death can be it can be a little bit tedious, and they always go at the most inopportune moment, like my lunch break is about to start, and then they decide to pop off into the afterlife at that moment, and
that's like when I used to work at bars. When I was about to have my dinner break, someone would throw up in the toilet, and I'd be like, "For fuck's sakes!" Different, but the same, you know.
Yeah, like if you're gonna die, I want it to be a bit prompt. I like a prompt. I like good prompt death. Like, I don't like it.
You're at the start of the day, you're going around all the rooms with a clipboard, like scheduling a rota.
Yeah.
You're like, you're on for 10:30. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
I'll be here by 15:15 just to kind of like prep and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, are you okay to take the minutes? Are you?
Yeah. You're up.
Oh goodness me. There's I think that's the care home thing has been one of the most horrific mishandlings of this corona crisis in the UK, particularly just sending people back into the most vulnerable communities without testing them. It's willful. It seems willful.
The problem is like this is like one of those behind the veil things where like I'd known about the terrible systemic failings of the care sector. I'm not talking about like the NHS, of the care sector for years and years. And so we could see it going this way. And when everyone else is suddenly really surprised at how much the care sector's been neglected and how much it's been mismanaged and that they haven't got these supplies or these resources, we were like, "Dolly!" Like we've been witnessing this for so long, and you know I've been talking about it for a long time as well. It's something that there's. It's not an incentivized profession. It's so poorly paid.
Yes.
We were illegally paid under minimum wage for a while. It's not professionalized, so there isn't really a stringent vetting process other than your CRB or DBS checks.
Yeah.
There isn't much getting in the way of you getting this kind of job. And I mean, it's just a job that is massively in disrepute, and they also rely on emotional blackmail to get you to commit to like an abundance of shifts where you're reaching the point of burnout, because they know that we're really we're enmeshed in the lives of these people.
Yes.
That we're like an extension of their family, and that we will go above and beyond the call of duty because we hate the thought of them being neglected or not having the right kind of care or the right kind of care. And the care provider. I mean, the thing that baffles me as well is during all of this, like the government rightfully has been held to account and shown to be utterly lacking as with regards to care homes, and with a lot of mismanagement, really. But how the care providers have managed to escape too much scrutiny, because they've got a...
Yes, because it is a lot of it's a private industry, isn't it? Like
it's mostly private. So we would have sometimes NHS funded patients. So there'd be patients NHS funded, or there'd be some who were partially NHS funded but then also private, or those to full private, right? But it's a private model. It's not NHS. And they would purposely, there would be so many things that they would put in place just worrying about their bottom line, and all of it was economic incentive at to the detriment of the care that we were providing to these residents. So it's a massive shit show, the whole thing.
So when you two questions, when did you get into it, and second of all, like there's a trodden path, and there's a trodden set of kind of like boxes that people would assume that you tick on the way to becoming a well-known stand-up comedian, where you do open mics, you bring that further to bar shows, open spots on kind of semi-pro things, open spots on pro nights, starting to get like emceeing or opening in paid spots, 20s, middles, blah, 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 headlining, that whole thing. And at some point along the way, when like there's TV involved or kind of a bit more money, you finally do that thing. And I remember the example I'm thinking of is Kay Kurd had a video of him leaving work at the Apple store.
Oh yeah, where he's going down the stairs and
which is great. It's like, that was amazing, and it was like, that's so sick to kind of really have captured that moment, because I think it just blurs away for a lot of people. That kind of, and I think something similar might happen to me, because I kind of from the start have always found a way of making money from comedy, whether it's like running nights or like podcasts or like any of that stuff. And so mine will kind of blur away, because a lot of my work is kind of freelance anyway, so it'll just gradually tip the scale. It's not going to be a moment where I go, I quit. Like, it'll just kind of. But in terms of the care home stuff, because you're talking about like it's not well paid, it is something that you care deeply about, and it's like, if you wanted to make more money at a easier job, you could. So if it was just about paying the bills, you probably would do a different job. So do you think like doing more and more comedy or like writing or anything?
So mine was the same. So at the beginning of 2019, that's when the bulk of my income was coming from comedy. So it got to a point where like 90% of my income was coming from comedy, and then if I had a month that was a bit of a weak month, I had a bank contract, so I could just pick up a care shift, right, to supplement my income. And it fascinates me the sort of different trajectories there are within comedy, because I had the same sort of thing. I was, from quite early on, I was finding ways to monetize this, and I was like a publicly subsidized comedian for a long time, but different organizations would get me to host comedy nights or host events where it was like Q&A events or book launches or this type of thing. And then I was so about a year in, I got onto a pro night. I got into a pro night through Liam Williams, but then I was still a massive junkie. So even though I did well at these nights, and then I started getting there, and then there was I started a flurry of like paid gigs, and then I'm trying to think. Sorry, mate, that I'm thinking of the timeline. So that was it. So I started getting pro nights. I started getting paid for gigs, not all the time, but just you know, enough to kind of tide me over, but having to still rely on care work. Oh yeah, but then I became like an size of filthy junkie at that point. I remember going to those gigs. I'd have like 60 hydrocodone tablets and like a flask of like a vodka and morphine mix. Like, so it was like vodka. I was using morphine as like a mixer with a vodka. And I even though I was still reliable, I'd come up and do the gigs and I'd do all right. I mean, looking back, I was probably shit, but for that moment in time, it felt like I was doing okay. But then I went to rehab, and then I had like a 9 or 10 month hiatus, and in 2017, and by that point, I'd already kind of stopped enjoying stand up. It felt like a chore. I was very manic and erratic, and I kind of was anhedonic in everything. Like, I felt nothing. I felt very numb. I felt just nothing at all. So then I had that massive break. And then when I came back to it, I sort of was shunted backwards again into, like, I never did the open mic thing of like signing up for an open mic night. I never done that shit. But I sort of went back to doing, you know, mixed bills that weren't paid or were low paid. And then, just incrementally like built up again. But it was like, I get my, I get like my income in a very piecemeal way, because I'm not one of these guys who, you know, has a year schedule of like club bookings. Like, I'm not one of these guys who's like, you know, the big built for purpose clubs. But I'll get money off sort of the boutique fringier gigs that are low paid, so I might have to do 3 of them to get the amount that I get for one, you know, big club spot. And then I'd be breaking into trial spots at the clubs and that, and then I'd get it through touring as well, and then I'd get it through putting on my own nights, and then I'd get it from the care home tour stuff, and then I'd get it from bits of writing for radio things. And I've just managed to generate an income by doing fucking loads of stuff, basically. Just stuff all over the place. I don't think I'll ever be a kind of dyed in the wool club comic, as in like the big clubs. I won't be like a club regular. I'll be someone who will do them occasionally, but then will, you know, make up an income doing lots of other different bits as well. So
in terms of, and I'm sure you've told the story like countless times, but just that, like, it's interesting. I find when you tell a story enough times, you kind of lose ownership or like kind of connection to it. It's almost like you have a story that you turn into a bit, and you add a few little things, like John Maher, who's a fantastic comedian. I don't know if you've met him. He says he can't really remember the story of his heart attack because he's told the bit so many times.
Of course, yeah.
Because you kind of like, when like, that's how we remember things. We tell the story over and over again, and it changes, and we misremember things like deliberately or willfully or otherwise. So like, in terms of like how, what brought you to the point of like when did you leave school? When did you start getting involved with kind of substances in various forms, and then how did that kind of lead you to, because it's I think it's much more common in America to have these kind of addict stories where you got people like Theo Von and Bobby Lee of like, well, conscious, like, we'll say like, I've been to rehab, I was addicted to this, I did this, I really had to, but they were comedians while they were addicts. Do you know what I mean? And kind of, so like when did you leave school?
Okay, so I'll go, like, this is like really interesting topic of sort of explorations. I think there's a lot of self-mythologizing as an addict. So self-mythologize, and also as for comedians, I think a big part of being a comedian, especially if you're the kind of comedian who wants to give the audience a sense of your personality and worldview, is that you kind of cultivate these origin stories or the these anecdotes that kind of become pivot points in your trajectory and stuff like that. And also because just being comedians, we're part of a folkloric tradition, and a folkloric tradition is like delivering from word of mouth to to an audience, and that audience lives word blah 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 blah. They're part of that is honing and crystallizing these parts of your autobiography, and it's really hard, I've found, to cut through the bullshit and cut through the bit or the artifice of the druggy persona that you have, or the dirtbag persona you have, to say, oh, actually, here's what happened, like here's how it is. And when I was in rehab, one of the things that you had these things called COGS. Can't remember what it stands for. It's like it's an anagram for something, and they're specifically tailored for you and your recovery and your personality. And one of the things they would always say to me is that I would over intellectualize or over analyze everything, and that was preventing me from getting in touch with by just kind of baseline emotion. And they said when we read your daily diaries, they said they were like wonderful kind of short stories or bits of material, and very evocative and really enjoyable to read. But like, are you hungry or are you horny? Like, I don't care. I don't like, I just want to know, just get in. And there's this other guy I was with who like came from a family of like gypsy fighters, and he beat his superior officer with a paving slab, and he was like a real kind of boy, and he was very adept at having direct contact with his just real baseline emotions. And so he was actually a very emotional person and cried very easily. And so I find it hard to say this. I've basically, like, reality's become blurred for me. Like, sometimes I'm like, where you isolate a part of your life and embellish it for comic effect, in my head I'm like, is that an embellishment, or is that actually how things transpire?
But everyone, I don't think that's particular to comedians or particular to you. I think everyone. This is why eyewitness accounts aren't kind of respected as much in courts of law, because they just don't. You can get people to confess to things that they didn't even fucking do, because the nature of memory is so fucked. And I think, listen, you tell stories at dinner parties and you fucking add a bit, take away a bit. That's not really important. That's that. Everyone tells stories. Like, it is one of the most human things ever. And by telling your own story, you fucking you paint over the cracks or add extra cracks or like do fucking any kind of different things.
I think that's it. Like narrativization is inherent. Like you said, is something that like, so the story, I mean, so I can just give you like the facts of it. From I first ever got drunk when I was 13 years old. We went round this girl's house, and she showed us, me and my friend, it's me and a friend, when we were 13-year-old boys and she was 13-year-old girl, she showed us her vagina. And I remember being really sort of weirdly traumatized by it. And remember, there was like a screensaver of like Microsoft, I don't know what, was it Microsoft 2000 or whatever, and it had all these little pipes that just kept going like that. Like, there was all these little pipes, like a little animation of all these pipes. I remember just sitting and focusing on that and having this moment of like disassociation, because it felt a bit seedy and weird. And then she offered us a drink, and I thought it was a glass of lemonade. I downed it. She was very wealthy. Her dad was very wealthy. I downed it, and it was this like 90% proof shit. So that was like my first drink. My first drink was a very, very potent, very strong drink. And I remember running around and round and round a trampoline. And even then, I remember thinking like, oh, I feel complete. Like, I feel whole.
Okay.
Like, I up to that point, I don't remember ever being free of self-consciousness or anxiety, and in that moment I felt like a full version of myself. It's like when my friend Jack before said, like, oh, what I love most about Coke. What I love most about Coke is that it makes you like a really good version of yourself, like a really honest representation of yourself. Like you feel like your true self. I was like, that's what the Coke makes you think, but you are absolutely the worst fucking version of yourself. Like snogging a bird in a nightclub with like a shit streak up his back, and we can all smell actual human shit. And he's snogging his bird, and he's like, yeah, there's a liberation and a freedom to that, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best version of yourself. So yeah, so from that age, drink was a problem. I would always drink to blackout drunk. I went through all my college years being an isolate, like a hermetic person. Like I had no friends in college. I had 3 close friends I've known since I was a baby, and we're all still friends now. But actually, in college, I had no one. I had no friends. I wore a great grey tracksuit every day. I had a shaved head, but the tutors loved me. The tutors loved me. So I was very, I was an autodidactic person. I was very bookish. I loved reading, and I could have really in-depth.
There's a thing that will happen frequently on this podcast, and you're very good for it, where you'll say a big word and then you'll say a slightly smaller word and then you'll say the third one, and I don't understand until you say the third one. You go like, you're very didactic, and I'm like, no clue. Bookish, nah, I loved reading. I was like,
yeah. I've done a reading.
But it's me. I was like, nothing. That makes sense.
Yeah. See, it sounds like because that sounds like I'm like putting on airs and graces, and that it's like an affectation, but it does, like, you start off saying words like that when you're younger
deliberately.
It's a bit of flexing. You want to kind of, I always wanted people to, because I'm a working class person, I always wanted people to think I was like intellectually stimulated.
Yes.
I didn't give a shit if people thought I looked good. I always wanted people to think I was. But then, eventually, like all affectations, it eventually becomes you. You become that thing. But then, like Alfie Brown pointed out, he said, I'm someone who, is well read and likes reading, but then will still say things like, I'd done a degree in English literature and creative writing. They still got that like sort of.
I think you and Alfie Brown are interesting. Interesting to observe next to each other. For people who don't know Alfie Brown, if you go to my other podcast, Doing Bits, there's an episode with him, which is kind of a good. You get a sense of kind of who he is. You're an interesting kind of pair to observe beside each other, because you're both very well read, and you both use them big words, and but neither of you use them in a way that fucking annoys me. Do you know what I mean? Where I'm just like, often you'll use it, and then from the context I can go, I can probably work out what that means. But I think you both come at it from very different places, where I think Alfie Brown is kind of middle class and went through all the kind of traditional routes of like education and all of these things, where if you've come at it from a maybe a more, and I don't want to like knock Alfie at all, but maybe a more conscious and deliberate or that's been forced upon you, that like you it wasn't just like when I went to school, I went to a grammar school, and I remember just being, even at the time I was like, this doesn't fucking make sense, because the done thing was to apply to medicine, dentistry, or law, and I was like, why are those the only 3 things you're pushing us into? That seems fucking ludicrous. And where when that's the expected thing, like, it's still great to read, and still great to be able to speak properly. But you've had to maybe grab a hold of it a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's a different. Not, I was gonna say social caste, but obviously caste has bad connotations. But
Well, I think it's accurate.
yeah. Different social caste. I think like Alfie's got sort of family who are in the media and stuff like
Yes.
that. And so he probably comes from a place where there was intelligentsia, whereas my family there isn't that. Not to like my mum had no college education. She went straight into just nursing. So the ilk, like the ilk I come from, is very working class or lower middle class. So yeah, for me, it was like a conscious decision to. I mean, always loved reading from when I was young, so maybe I was genetically predisposed to it in some way. But it was you have to overcompensate as a working class person to overcome what society perceives as your sort of cognitive shortcomings. You hear an accent like this, people automatically assume like, you know, I sound thick. That's the problem. I've got the voice and
you've got the voice of someone that society deems to be less educated or intelligent. And I think there's an important distinction to be made between knowledge and intelligence.
Yeah, definitely.
And kind of education and intelligence, because there's like for me, like I on paper I'm quite highly educated, but it's all in fucking bullshit, so it's not actually very useful. Like I am highly educated in percussion, which is really fucking of very little use to very, very much anyone.
That's an amazing thing to have, though.
But it's like it was cool, and it introduced me to a whole world of art and like an experience of things, and like I got into theater through that, and writing and comedy, like just performing. So like it's great, but I like something me and my girlfriend talk about a lot is the fact that I can't like all the like the knowledge escapes me quite a lot of the time. Like I'll talk to someone like Horatio Gould, who is kind of quite well read on like politics and history, and he'll be like, oh, but this has happened before, and this is a precedent for this, and these patterns, and and I kind of I can't really do that, but I'm very, very emotionally intelligent, and I can tap into the feeling of a moment in history, and the feeling of what it feels to be this person right now, and what it feels to be this, and what
and that's a fucking great thing to have, especially in comedy. Like especially like you can have people who have like the acquisition of knowledge, but when they convey that knowledge, it's done in a very sterile, prefactorial way, and it's not necessarily. It's not necessarily. It's almost like a memory game. Like they can remember the dates and the like, which is saying I'm not good. I'm not good at remembering dates and facts and this, that, and the other. But I can, you know, I think doing care work. I think I'm probably quite emotionally intelligent as well. And you know, again, you having that percussive intelligence for comedy, fucking great. You know, stuff like timing and being able to almost kind of catch. I can't think of a good way to word it. Kind of catch a certain rhythm, maybe. I don't know. That's
well, there's just like a kind of general like it's almost become subconscious when like I've been doing drums and rhythm and music since I was 8 or 9 years old, so you kind of just go through and you have this whole like just awareness of what stuff sounds like, and it's very not. I remember the first time I was working on a Shakespeare with a friend, like a monologue, and they were like, okay, so let's work out which lines are in iambic pentameter, as if it was going to take a long time. And I was like, that one is, that one is, that one isn't, that one. And he was like, what the fuck? And I was like, I've spent my entire life doing rhythms. Like, it's not difficult for me to tell you whether a line has 10 syllables and where the stresses are. Like, it's not, it's something that is naturally within my thing. And like, I am aware that like when I listen back to myself doing comedy, I'm like, and I don't know like what anyone else does because no one's actually that honest about it, but I'm like that there's jokes where if you say it with one inflection it works and you say it with another inflection it just doesn't fucking work. And I think
Yeah.
it's just like I find it easy to analyze all those things and like identify them consciously as well as subconsciously, because I think a lot of people will be able to go, oh, that didn't work, I'll try it like this, but I can go, that didn't work and that's probably why, and then like spot the patterns.
Yeah, that's another like that brings me to like I remember another like really good bit of advice I got is from Kiri Pritchard McLean, where she said that there's a lot of comedians who, you know, they're skilled joke writers, they're skilled performers, but they don't know how to switch gears to match the sort of the timbre of a room. They don't know how to, and so that, which like, and having taken out on board, that's I think I'm quite good at doing that now. Like I think I'm good at doing, if it's a quite a patchy, a bit uncomfortable room, I know the certain the things I have to do, the way I have to change my sort of my end and my disposition to bring
to unify the
yeah. It's and that was such a good bit of advice to learn how to.
That's something I've thought about since Edinburgh last year. I remember I did the Rat Pack, which was a late compilation show thing, and it was very rowdy audience, and I saw comedians go on and struggle a bit, and it didn't go that well, and I just went up being like, just like noticed that like, look, anytime you shut up, they will heckle. So I just did my set and didn't leave any gaps. Like I was just like bang, 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 joke, 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 and it was just like way faster than I would normally do it. I have quite like a laconic, like conversational style, but I got up and was like, and I think there's this weird thing that happens with comedians where, and I've disagreed with people on this before, where when you do a comedy course or when you do whatever, they always tell you to find your persona and find your voice and like the way you do it. And I think, look, for me, all it's ever been is speaking to the room full of people in a way that they will understand. Just getting the ideas across. And if it's King Kong, you need to get up there and go bang, bang, bang. And it's not ideal, but it works, and you get to say the things that you want to say. It's the same jokes. People are like, oh, but I'm very low energy. And I'm like, look, sometimes don't be.
Yeah, like, that's what I'm the same with like gong shows. I don't really do it. I done King Gong when I was really, really new, and I was right at the end, so I just didn't go that well. And then I did the Not Too Bad Honk Show one recently and won it. And it's when I do those shows, like I got on stage and it was like just everything that I was doing was like I was thrusting forward. It was quite aggressive and quite not aggressive as in threatening, but just quite aggressive. Yeah. And it's I knew it had to be right for that occasion. But yeah, there's times like when I've done Rat Pack and other different shows, and where people are heckling, they're kind of operating under the misguided assumption that they're somehow contributing to the gig in a positive way, and they just want to be part of it. So whenever I have those gigs, I just kind of abandon my set and make this interactive. And I usually have 3 people in the crowd that I'll designate as my dads, who I really, and I want to try and force them to love me by the end of the set. And it becomes this thing of like, it becomes like this kind of fun game of, because it also works, because if you do something that's shit, people laugh because I've disappointed my dads in the audience. Yeah,
you set up these constructs.
Yeah, and I have to try and regain their love. And then so when you're actually floundering, it adds to the set.
That's to me, that's clowning. That's that kind of that embracing of failure and just like just being there, and like just what happens, and it's all fucking just funny. But yeah, I think like, look, we all act differently depending on who we're with. If we're at a dinner party with our girlfriend's parents, we will like kind of wise up a bit and
Yeah,
speak
yeah.
a bit more, whatever. And but if we're at a fucking house party at 2 a.m., it'll be different again. So it's like, look, some gigs are a house party at 2 a.m. and some gigs in Edinburgh are a fucking dinner with your girlfriend's parents. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just change, like, stand up is you being a person on stage, and sometimes you're a slightly different version of yourself, and that's just fucking fine.
I have, yeah, exactly like that. And but I have these, like, one thing me and my brother don't particularly get on that well. But one thing I've always admired in my brother is he's very, very consistent in any kind of social situation. He's always been a bit of a bragger, a loudmouth, and he's not necessarily a bit of a blowhard and arrogant and stuff like that. And he kind of never drops that. And it's even in like this. So there's Craig Campbell, who's, I don't know if you've seen the stuff. He's just saying like this stuff. I cannot condone it in any way. This stuff he's saying. But the thing is like, I tried to sort of speak privately and try and just say, like, please don't dig your heels in with this. This isn't, you're on the wrong side of this.
This is not the hill to die on.
Yeah, so try not to be sort of stubbornly resistant to what people are saying to you. So what I'm about to say isn't condoning any of that kind of stuff, but there is a defiant part of my personality that when someone leans in to the atrocious shit they're doing, irregardless of whether it's going to torpedo their life and their career because of this kind of pathetic
it's so human.
pride.
So human.
But there's something I can see in that where I'm like, I've got a grudging respect for that.
Fair fucking play.
Even though it's in that particular instance, I like any person with any kind of compassion or empathy would see that and say, it's fine to have a bit of performative anger and disregard for general civility and politesse. But in this instance, you're just
to clarify for people who are listening, it's like a guy who's basically like, so in comedy at the minute, and we'll talk about this a bit more in a second, is there's a lot of stories being shared about sexual assault and predatory behaviors, and just a general feeling that it's not a very welcoming or safe place for women or non-binary people, or kind of not men, to exist in. And this guy's basically come out and his claim roughly seems to be that everyone's just like using their experience to just get them ahead in the industry. I think one of the things he said is like, oh, I got raped is the new give me a gig. So it's like, it's just not the way to fucking come at it. And
he's saying, sorry mate, I just interrupted your
no, go.
I was saying, it's I can understand people who want to lash out against what they perceive to be overly puritanical, like liberal orthodoxies, and
because there is a strain of that comes in when these conversations get raised, but that's not what all of it is. So.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I said. Like, there is definitely a strain of that, and it can drive me fucking mad. But just for me, this isn't one of those occasions. He's like he's saying that women are weaponizing their. This doesn't. A woman to talk about these horrendous things she won't gain anything from that, because she'll be met with such horrendous kind of opposition from people who think she's doing exactly that she's saying it as kind of a status thing, madly. Like, this is not that. This is like it's like it was a collective purging of latent trauma from a broad sweep of females or or non-binary people within the comedy industry.
Yeah.
And it was very, you got a palpable sense of it, of the frustration and the anger and the rage of women just saying, fucking enough.
Yeah.
I am fucking sick of this. I'm done with it. I'm done with you making us feel like we're unwelcome in an industry where we have fucking talent, where we have a place in this. I'm fucking sick of all you men diminishing our place in the world and in this sector. And you could feel it, like it was so eye-opening and bracing for a lot of men, I'm sure, in the industry. So I don't know how you could be willfully ignorant of that fact, or just like with this dickhead, be turn it into like a culture wars thing. It's like he's conflating women saying we want to be safe in the workplace with a criminal trial for a guy who joked about a bomb on Twitter. Like, it's not, the two things aren't connected.
Yes. And I have this interesting perspective on it, because I've felt the not the brunt. I mean, fucking nothing happened, but like, it was very, like, I was very spoken about in the past few days in a 250 comment thread about whether my comedy sensibilities were valid or disgusting. And it came amongst this conversation of predatory behaviors, and it was, for people who don't know, it was this post went up in this comedians Facebook group that has 14.7 thousand members, which is I reckon about 25 of them are comedians. And so a post went up saying, oh look, I've been offered this gig, I can't do it. I need a young person friendly comedian to do a Zoom gig for a 16th birthday. And I commented at Chris D'Elia. And if you don't know who Chris D'Elia is, fucking listen to the last episode of this podcast. I talk about it. And as a joke, because it's like, look, he's been called out for essentially grooming 16-year-olds. And I've essentially seen the word 16-year-old comedy, and I went, ha, and just made a fucking joke.
Yeah.
And there is a problem that some people are conflating me doing that with, they're saying it's part of this kind of stream of making women feel unwelcome, and this stream of kind of horrific stories that are coming out. And I just like, and I like literally in the group there's a album of comments like this will get you banned by the administrator, the greatest administrator of all time, Simon Kane. And amongst those like comments that will get you banned, there's 6 photos. 5 of them are women sharing a really horrendous and traumatic experience that they've had, and then a guy beneath it being, oh, but why don't you just fucking like suck my dick? Yeah, it's fucking horrendous stuff, and they should absolutely be fucking removed from that group because they're creating a horrible toxic environment. But it's literally 5 photos of that kind of comment, and then me making a silly joke, and I felt this push where I felt, and a stranger messaged me, and I don't agree with much of what she said, but her intention was interesting, because she messaged me as someone who had spoken out against me, and because basically someone posted being like, this is ridiculous, you can't kick someone out for this kind of joke, that's like not okay, like blah 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 blah. And she was one of the people who was like, no, that's pretty fucking bad, like saying that what I'd done was awful. And the argument seemed to be that I had triggered emotions or memories of trauma for people by mentioning his name. And I don't know if I accept that, because he's been in the news all week, and like if like in terms of talking about like, oh, this triggered this memory, I'm like, look, all of these stories are being shared. Like, I think that's probably more likely triggered your memory than me tagging a like alleged pedophile in a joke that like shows him up as an alleged pedophile. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, it's like that. That's a name that's in the public domain, and he's like a pop cultural figure as well.
yeah,
And you can't kind of you can't kind of you can't tweak your life to accommodate the I'm trying to word it in a way because I don't want to seem insensitive. Like
yes,
you can't you look there's lots of people, different people with lots of different types of trauma, and you can't you can't I can't. It's one of those things that I could probably I feel like I can't say it in because of how fraught and kind of raw everything is at the moment. I worry that I'm going to kind of say the wrong thing. You
yeah.
Yeah, you can't accommodate everyone's sort of specifications.
Well,
Yeah,
yes, and it seems flippant to compare it where you shouldn't talk about these things because it will offend people and hurt people, and people have this list of things that you're not allowed to talk about. And my kind of counter argument is often my mum would be offended if you swore on stage, but you still swear on stage. So where's the line
yeah, exactly that.
of when is the offended person right, and when does culturally we go, no, you're just a bit too sensitive to swear
Yeah,
words.
and
You know what
there's gradations as well. This is the
I mean?
thing, like flattening nuance doesn't help anyone, because when you're conflating rape and abuse with your joke, which was, everyone could see the logical leap of that joke.
Yeah,
It was a funny joke. I mean, I kind of said that its potential to harm is very low, but then someone rightfully corrected me on that and said, I don't really think that's necessarily for you to decide. You're not an arbiter of
yeah.
what's going to offend people and stuff. And yeah, you're right. I'm not, but it's yeah, it's like I used to say, I'm not one of these people who defines themselves on this free speech argument,
No.
of this sort of Millsian uh, um, uh, theory of liberty. I'm not someone who defines myself that, but I'd kind of just say, if I had to go anywhere in that argument, I'd say I'm a free speech absolutist. But if a consensus forms around what you say and that it's bad, you have to face the consequences of that speech.
Yeah.
But then I've kind of realised, especially in since George Floyd and all the arguments about blackness and stuff like that, I've realised how a very privileged position that is, because the kind of hate speech that's out there would never impact me. It would never impact
There's
me or my place in the world.
I have interesting for you to say that in terms of that, because a couple of things, like I am totally behind the Black Lives Matter movement and have been addressing and like kind of trying to learn about the systemic aspects of racism and how like insidious it is, and how it built into our speech patterns it is. But there's an interesting thing where, and someone that kind of speaks out against this in an interesting way is Lanny Sherman,
Mm.
where there is this thing of like of like this will never affect you. You've never felt anything like this, but like you're working class, and
Yeah,
we've spoken about how the fact that the assumption around the way you talk makes people think you're stupid. I face similar issues where anti-Irish sentiment is built into English culture so like complexly and so cemently, and just it's there, and there's this weird thing where Irish people deny it as well, whereas within the kind of discussion about blackness, everyone go like, I was speaking to Archie Maddox, and I was explaining that I've been brought to like doubt my own experience, to be like, oh, maybe that's not them being anti-Irish, maybe they're just like anti-Vittorio. And like I said to him, do you ever feel this weird sense of doubt around your experience where like a taxi driver looks at you in the rear view mirror and kind of you could feel like they're looking at you in a racial or racist way, but also someone could be like, oh, but they're just looking at you, and he's like, yeah, but you build up this fucking just bank of things like that, and you kind of realize that it is racial. And I felt like living in England for 4 or 5 years, I built up this bank of experiences of anti-Irishness, and I kind of have gotten to a point where, like, look, Irish people were portrayed in English media as monkeys up until as recently as 1982, which is really not fucking long ago. And the place where I am currently, and the place where I grew up, Catholics got the vote after women. So and this the problem with it is that I found recently, which I've found myself, is the natural instinct is to use people's own methodologies against them. So they go, oh, but you can't talk about my lived experience. You can't deny my lived experience. You can't da 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 da. I need you to, like, you're not allowed to talk about that. And the natural inclination is, because they're talking about something that you feel like affects you, but in a different way, you follow all their trains of thought. So I jump to the other side and goes, well, you can't make jokes about the potato famine, and like, because it's ridiculous for an English person to make a joke about the Irish famine, because it's essentially an attempted genocide of Irish people. And like, for you to make a joke about that, to me, would be like a German making a joke about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And I think, but then I take a few days and I go, wait, what if I don't mind about potato famine jokes? Which is really the truth of the matter. Like, I only mind because I feel like I should.
Yeah.
And like, I don't have to like them. I don't have to find them funny. Like, I was watching a podcast with Andrew Schultz recently, and they were talking about stuff, and it came up, and he's like, what about the Irish? Like, how can you not grow potatoes? Are you just drunk? And I was like, that's not funny.
Yeah.
You're one of my favorite comedians, but that's not funny. But that's fine.
It's kind of not funny, because it's just so, it's such an obvious, like, if you're going to stereotype the Irish, like,
Yes,
that,
but
it doesn't make you see the world anew. It doesn't
yeah,
doesn't
but it's just
subvert a
him. It's just
stereotype.
him on a podcast and just like fucking talking shit. And it's a podcast called Flagrant 2. So they want everything to be flagrant and just like punch through everything and get to the funny. And it's really, like, I appreciate it on a lot of topics. But this is the thing. Like, I want to be on that thing where I want everyone to feel that sense of laughing at everyone else, and then the buck comes around to them and they go, oh, well, I mean, I did laugh at everyone else. So
Yeah.
like, I don't have to like this, but it's happened to every other group in this room. So
Yeah.
so I'm kind of landing on this place of like, I don't have to be woke about being Irish. I want to speak about it, and I want to have my narrative on it, and I want to speak about it in a funny way. But I'm not going to tell anyone that they can't like question me about being Irish. You like you like there are these really negative connotations of being Irish, and I think there's assumption about like this kind of this broad brushstroke of like white men and even like male comedians like are all fucking whatever, and you think, look, what has one of the things that's actually been shown to have happened in the past couple of weeks is that your typical woke social justice warrior ally vocal performative ally boys are the worst
Oh
amongst
yeah, yeah,
us.
100%, yeah. And that's what, so like I'd say like the any kind of sort of arguments, any arguments like where there's a lot of social complexity that have become truncated is problematic. Like, there's just
Yeah,
to simplify stuff like that is not good, because as we know, like, we and the world contain multitudes. And I mean, I have a possibly naive faith in people negotiating the rules of living together in a society, and I sort of think trying to find social solidarity is a noble pursuit. But I think with sort of collectivization, it's not just finding the I'm trying to think of the word in. Okay, just forget that train of thought. Social warrior, the ones who really wear that kind of that stuff on their sleeve are definitely diddlers. Like they're always the pedos, they're always the rapists, and again, it comes to that thing of it's used as something to shield them, because it's the same in the same way that Louis C.K. was kind of like a scumbag who was striving towards enlightenment, and then would champion people like Tig Notaro and people, you know, who are feminist kind of figures, as a way to masquerade the abuses that he was getting. And I think actually that's a bad example, because with him, I think the reason it was so disappointing and gutting that what we found out about him is because we thought, oh no, he understands the complexities of male behavior. He understands the Manichean side of masculinity, the light and the dark, and we thought he's a thoughtful, nuanced human being. And that's worse, because it kind of it shows that he has an awareness of this stuff, but still decided to do it anyway. So but I'm always wary. It's always a red flag, like any of these men who are very vocal about their allyship rather than committing to behind the scenes actions and policy that will actually change stuff.
The thing that I did, where I was like, my mate Aaron, who you've met now, Aaron McCann, he makes fun of me for it, because he's like, look, you got fucking caught up in it because you posted all the right things. You were vocal about your kind of support of women in comedy, and you were vocal about the Black Lives Matter thing. And then you went back to trying to do jokes. And that's not allowed once you're in the woke brigade.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, you know what they do? And like Tim Dillon talks about it, is they get you with something that seems undeniable. They go, oh yeah, like George Floyd shouldn't have been murdered. And you're like, oh yeah, I agree. And they're like, yeah, come here. Yeah, he shouldn't have died, and police shouldn't kill people just because of their black. And you go, yeah, fucking yeah. And then you go, yeah, I support this. And then you go like, you go like, you like make a joke around that topic on the right side of it, and everyone goes, no, you're minimizing it. And I'm like, okay, I'm out. And then what I was going to say earlier when that girl messaged me was that she messaged essentially to make sure I hadn't been radicalized by this moment, to make sure I hadn't become an alt-right free speech Alistair Williams type person who was going to go on a tirade and join UKIP and fucking QAnon and where we go one, where we go all, and like, but I'm not a fucking cunt, so it's not going to happen. But it's like you feel that pull, because what's bizarre to me is that the left is the politics of inclusion is a very abrasive and unwelcoming place, whereas the right as the politics of exclusion is very, very welcoming and will let you in and go, come on, and like, it's okay, like those people were very mean to you because you said the wrong word one time, come on in, we'll look after you, like we care about you, we care about free speech.
Well, there's the old adage that the left is concerned and compassionate about this kind of a nebulous idea of the world at large.
Yeah.
But the right is compassionate to the individual.
Yes.
Just the person. I mean, I don't know how true that is, but that's like.
Well, that's where it comes from economically. You know what I mean? It's the rights of the individual versus the rights of, and the kind of.
That actually goes. That goes toward, like, actually like ties in perfectly is something that I wanted to just mention briefly. So I had this conversation when I did the stream with Eddie Izzard and Arthur Smith, and we had a bit of an argument about this. And Arthur said that because like comedy isn't an inherently collaborative form, not as a stand-up comedian. And so comedians usually are sort of hyper individualistic, quite libertarian in the fact that there's like the self, self.
Yeah, you build it yourself, you do it
self,
yourself, you take on all the risk and you get all the reward type
exactly
thing.
Self-reliant, self-reliant, quite entrepreneurial, and sort of Thatcherite in their own way in regards to as well, like there's no such thing as society, and that you have to be a self-made person if you just fill up your bootstraps. And as we know, that is an absolute necessity with stand-up comedy, because nothing, it's a myth that stuff will be handed to you on a plate. It will not. It is constant and arduous admin, honing your writing, doing this, doing that, because it's not just working on the craft, it's building for yourself the infrastructure that will allow you to have access and visibility on the circuit. And it's constant. Every day I'm always plowing away at it, because you can see as well how momentum can drop off very quickly. Like a lot of these people rest on their laurels. They have a really good Edinburgh, they win an award, and they think that's it. That's sent me into the stratosphere. I've made it, and that will maybe give you a bit of a boost.
You go on a panel show that no one watches, and then
you might have a little bit of a boost, a few months maybe. But then if you don't carry on incrementally,
you need to capitalize on all those moments.
You will kind of fall into obscurity. And I said, but also there's comedians who have this quite a romantic outlaw view of comedy, and a view that sort of connotes a loftiness of concept, and that's incredibly sort of self-indulgent. And I'm someone who subscribes to that. I can be so fucking wanky with the way I talk about comedy, and also it's never really truly applied to comedy properly. Like it's an uneasy alliance. And I said, because with comedy there's always been that sort of bureaucratic administrative side of it. They just always had. It's never been free of it. And unless you're like a fucking Pueblo clown pissing on a baby in the desert, you're never going to be. And even with that, there's like a gift shop next door.
Yeah.
So you're Pueblo clown doing these sanctified like art of clowning. There's still the gift shop next door, and that's why I've sort of said to people, it's good to have artistic credibility and to believe in the kind of artistic merits of our form, but then also you need to be a bit of like, you have to hustle, and you have to be quite shrewd in the way you negotiate your way through the industry, and that's kind of why, like when I've said about the Live Comedy Association that I'm on the steering group for, we're not implementing anything. We're just pointing people in the right direction and showing them what the resources available, and the sort of the contacts they can make for certain things. And we said, so I don't know why people are being resistant to the fact that we're encouraging good workplace protocols, because this is a work, and like grievance procedures, or and maybe having a HR representative, that would never fucking apply to the shit you're saying on stage. That would never apply or diminish your creative output. It just gives, especially women in the industry, a sense of safety. And so that's why I don't really understand why people wouldn't want that. That seems like a good idea to me.
There's an interesting, like, I've seen some people frustrated with the fact that it seems some people have like co-opted the conversation to become about balanced lineups. And you kind of think, that feels like another conversation.
That's exactly, so this is exactly what I've been saying. It's like, that's something that you kind of kick the can down the road for that, and that can be like it's something I personally really believe in, and I think there should be that representation. But at the moment, a lot of people's livelihoods are at risk, and this industry that we love and cherish is fucking bleeding, and it feels like the survival of the industry should be of the utmost importance at this moment. And because unfortunately people can't hold two thoughts in their head at the same time, I say that as myself, like I can only invest so much energy in one or the other. And I think at the moment we should invest in all our time and energy into the survival of the industry. But then at the same time, I understand why a statement was released about what's happening at the moment, because the women who are crying out to be taken seriously on this particular issue, it became too loud to ignore, and I don't think we should ignore it. I think a statement to address the elephant in the room was the right call. I really do. But there, you know, there's stuff about the messaging as well. Like I think we need to, if we're going to make the case to government, which is exactly what we're doing, that this is an industry that deserves to be saved, we also need to really emphasize the merits of the industry and the people who are doing amazing, brilliant things in the industry as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to me about the industry and what is the comedy industry, and what does it reference when you mention the comedy industry, and what are you talking about? Are you talking about agents? Are you talking about clubs? Are you talking about comedians? Are you talking about promoters?
I mean, it's all of it, which is why we have like.
But it's interesting, like because I've kind of been quietly railing against the fact that the Arts Council don't fund stand-up comedy is just ludicrous to me, because they say, oh, ticket sales are doing well and it's not very many overheads, and I'm like, yeah, Kevin Bridges and Mickey Flanagan are selling out arenas, but like if you base it on the top end of anything, then you won't want to fund it. You look at the West End, you go like, oh, Wicked sells out every night, so we don't need to fund grassroots theatre. That's your argument that you're making, and it doesn't hold up.
This is where we said, so it's an incredibly granulated industry, and one of the things that we've created is this really easy like a visual map of how all the industry kind of interrelates and all the different parts of it, right? And we're really trying to include everyone involved in comedy. But then, like when I was talking to, this is a bit name droppy, but I'm not doing it for that reason. When I've been emailing with Stuart Lee, one of the things that he said about is that it's very, very, very low or almost zero government investment into comedy, but it putting so much wealth back into the economy. Mm-hmm. So like you said, low overhead, it's very, 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 very low investment, but pumping fuckloads of wealth back into it. And so and this is again the thing we're making the case for, and that we're having all these meetings with, and this elitist metropole idea of comedy as being a low degraded art form by the Arts Council, and that they're unwilling to legitimize it. They're unwilling to see it as something worth giving money to. And it's
I have like this cognitive dissonance with this, where there's a little cunty part of me that is that kind of libertarian Thatcherite, for want of a better word, of this ownership of stand-up comedy, where I think about, oh, we could do with funding, we could do with that, and then I get this mindset of like, well, it is like I could just fucking do it anywhere. Like I can gather people anywhere, and I can speak to them, and I can make them laugh. So I don't fucking need you, and I don't want to need you, and it's just that really childish thing.
Well, I don't even think. But as part of me, that's again, it's like that populist notion of comedy, is that we can exist outside of the establishment, and I fucking subscribe to that tenfold. Like I will do a gig on the back of a milk float. Like I'll do it anywhere. And there's that rough space idea of comedy of like you can just erect a curtain in the gulag and do a little comedy gig, or wherever. And mate, I'm bang into that. But that seems more socialistic for me, because it seems like there's no elite there. There's no or sort of socialist populist. I don't know. It's anyway. I kind of I kind of believe.
Like, for example, like you have, like, the Fringe is cancelled, but I'm going to Edinburgh because you can't cancel the Fringe.
Yeah,
I'm going to Edinburgh in August because I think I can make something happen, because I
that's fucking great,
people
man.
will want to see something. I'll be up a tree telling stories to the groundlings. Do
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, that's, like, you can't. I think it speaks volumes about what the Fringe has become, that you think that one corporation thinks they can cancel it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I did once. I think that's exactly right. And I definitely have anti-establishment leanings.
Mm.
But it's weird, like you say, I'm very anti-establishment and defiant in my head. But then because I got voted onto the steering group for Live Comedy Association, everyone would said I'm now like a company man. I'm very much smack bang in the middle of the establishment. But then us, in comparison to like where we've got on the cultural renewal task force, we're like the scrappy little upstarts who have don't really deserve a place at the table, whereas there's everyone else. So it's kind of like you're always a kind of upstart somewhere. But
Yeah, and it's this quite like, I have an interesting experience of unions and unionization, where there's a couple of things, especially recently, that have come up, where like unionization, very kind of left-wing socialist idea, where the workers represent themselves and fight for their own rights and their kind of their livelihoods. And I was vice president of my students' union for 2 years, and it's so easy. Number one, thankless, completely thankless. But number two, very easy to get caught up in stuff that doesn't actually make a difference. Like, I remember one of the first things we did, it's like, oh yeah, we got to staff emails because we think that'll make us be taken more seriously. And I said to my mate, like, oh, isn't this great? And my mate, who wasn't on the SU, was like, no, that doesn't make a fucking difference. You're still sent, like, an email's a fucking email. They'll still get it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that we just spent a month doing fucking nothing.
So you want to, I really want to kind of, you can get bogged down in the nitty gritty of procedural stuff, and which is why, I want to try and streamline stuff as much as possible. Sometimes just kind of throw caution to the wind and just do something myself. It might blow up in my face, but just kind of go off grid and not off grid. Become like I don't know,
off piste.
Go off piste. Just kind of take the law into my own hands. And also you can do stuff that's quite tokenistic. I don't ever want to get into tokenism. But then I think that you can do the really effective but quite boring and incrementalist kind of policy stuff that actually can create some change. But then also you have the symbolic stuff, which it seems it doesn't really change anything, but I don't know. Yeah, symbols can be quite potent.
It is strange. And then there's a discussion going on at the minute in America where people are anti the police union.
Yeah.
But left-wing people are against this union because it's overly protecting the bad people within the union, and that's the problem with the union. Where do the people get kind of protected from, because they don't want to be seen to having like badness within them? Like, I've heard there's a thing in American universities where sexual assault cases, they have structures within the university to deal with them internally and not go to the police. Because then it doesn't feed into the statistics and the story about that university being like a not safe place to whatever. So it's this, I guess there's maybe a concern that like the Live Comedy Association becomes this kind of like protecting the worst, the maybe the worst elements of it, rather than pushing forward the best. How do you feel about, I know there's a pushback against the LCA kind of inviting the corporate element of comedy to the table?
Yeah, it's sort of hard to, so I wouldn't ever want to be seen to, these people are kind of my colleagues now, and I'm chatting to them, so I wouldn't ever want to be seen to kind of discredit certain people not until my 6 months is up on the LCA anyway. Yeah. But yeah, no, there's definitely sort of redundant intermediaries, I think, within the industry. But I'm not. I can't be too candid about it at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's
I wouldn't.
fair.
But yeah, I've got a shower, mate. So
Go.
It's been really lovely chatting.
That was great.
I hope that was interesting.
We'll do it again. Yeah, man. I'll put it out today, so it'll come out today. So
perfect. That's great.
Super. But I'll catch you soon. Have a good
show. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, mate. See you.
Bye. And that was Pope Lonergan, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had fun. I hope you gained something from it. If you've made it this far, definitely click like. Definitely give it a 5-star review. Look, we're building this together. Me and you, the person watching or listening. We're building this together. So spread the word. Spread the word of Vittorio so that I can get cancelled and still enjoy making things for you. That's the dream, isn't it? That I can exist outside of the system. But I hope you enjoyed the chat with Pope. I think it was good. I think we discussed a lot of interesting things. I might go for a nap now. Enjoy your day. Goodbye. Up the fucking good, guys.